then I will need my notes and then we can start. Ready?
Yes. Wait, one more thing. I'm going to go now. I get to see you instead of us.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome, Jim Ruff. I'm so happy that you are here at our Pioneers of Change Online Summit.
Thank you. Really fun to see you again, Emma.
Yeah, you are really a pioneer in developing new methods to solve unsolvable problems.
Yeah.
And that's where we met. We met each other I think in 2012 in Salzburg. And I had the pleasure and we had really much fun when I could learn these methods directly from you. You invented dynamic facilitation and a transformation process called Wisdom Council.
Yeah.
And I also had the great honor to facilitate a Wisdom Council together with you. This was really a very special, a special experience together with you. So I'm really grateful for this experience. And over the years, the Wisdom Council developed into so-called Bürgerinnenrat or citizen councils here in Germany and in Austria. And for example, in Vorarlberg, which is a state here in Austria, the participatory democracy has been enshrined into the Vorarlberg state constitution in 2013. And there is also a directive stating that citizen councils can be convened from below by obtaining at least 1,000 signatures. So this really came into the constitution, your inventions. And we had a wisdom council or citizen councils here in Austria together on the topic of climate issues. In Germany, it's just a citizen councils on nourishment, which was directly commissioned by the German parliament. So the idea is spreading. And I loved to go to the roots of the ideas. And so I'm really grateful that you are here today. And I'm curious what we will talk about.
One thing I want to check out is the terminology is really difficult because I now call it the Wisdom Council process all the time because people tend to think of it as a one-time event if I don't do that. So to me, it's really a restructuring of our process of governance. It's not an intervention where we deal with an issue and go back and stay in the same system. It's about setting up a regular, ongoing Wisdom Council process that's statewide. And that's a restructuring of how we do democracy, how we think together, how we talk together, and the kinds of, I'm going to use another word, decision that we make. And I prefer the word choice, that we co-create the choice rather than make the decision. So, I mean, I'm realizing some of this terminology is a bit much, but I think it's really important to kind of make these distinctions. One more distinction is I call it the Wisdom Council process. And in German, that doesn't translate very well. So they call it the Citizens Council. And they also call the Citizens Assembly process, or the Citizens Assembly, which is an intervention, the Citizens Council. And then, I mean, there's a whole history of citizens councils that are not the Wisdom Council process. And so I'm just struggling to, I keep holding up the flag. I wish people would call it the Wisdom Council process, but because
yeah, that's why we are talking, because there is so much going on participatory processes here. And I was just, I'm curious to learn from you. What are your distinctions? What is your original idea on it? So that can help to create really wise processes or really inventive ones. Maybe we will go step by step because there is so much in it in the first sentences you said.
Yeah.
Maybe you can just share a little bit. What are you excited about right now at the moment? What are you working on? What is your yeah, biggest, greatest project that you are working on at the moment?
Well, okay, to me, there's like 4 social innovations. Dynamic facilitation, which is a way of holding space for people so that they can all think at a very high level and solve impossible to solve problems. And that requires a certain kind of thinking that I call choice creating, not decision making, not problem solving, not deliberation, not blah, blah, blah. So there's 4 of them. The other one is the wisdom council process, which can be applied to organizations, it can be applied to state level, it can be applied to how do we get a large system of people to think at very high level. And now coming to your question, the last one is what I call society's breakthrough. And that's applying the wisdom council process to the global situation and to the national situation, like in the US and in Germany and so forth. I have been so excited about the society's breakthrough part for a long time, and what excites me, but it's really been almost impossible to talk about because people haven't suffered enough about our system. In other words, our system is terminal, I believe. It's I'm sorry, even now other people know too. So our system's terminal, and I'm very excited that I can finally start talking about society's breakthrough in a way that people respond with curiosity. And it's so relieving, because last thing I want to do is die before that gets out into the world. Here's a way we can actually start solving these problems. Well, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I had a conversation with somebody I didn't quite know, but he responded to something I said and it excited me. So I wanted to talk with him, and he's very much going down a road of what most people are going down, which is if we just teach people to raise their consciousness, if we just help educate people about civics, if we just do these civic innovations or interventions, then we'll be okay. Well, none of that touches the system.
Mhm.
It's just improving things now that we're in this system that's terminal. And so what you end up with is really we're muting the symptoms is what we're doing. We're not dealing with the problem, that our system is the problem, and it is causing all these impossible seeming problems, all these impossible to solve existential issues. How do we transform to a system that can fit the situation we're in? Mm-hmm. So what really excites me, I'm coming back to your question again, is I feel like people are ready to hear. And I had this conversation with this guy yesterday who's going down this other path, and he just showed so much curiosity in our conversation, and he was open-minded. And I skipped around the house all day just because I was talking about what usually people dismiss, and yet he was already down a path, and yet he was really responding with curiosity. Very exciting to me yesterday.
Wow. But if you say the system is terminal and we have to transform it, do you mean that the system of democracy, or what do you mean by that?
Well, it's all of it. What we call democracy is not, of course, democracy. And capitalism are the 2 big elements, and our culture that comes along with that. Underneath it all, it's structured to be in place. I talked about 3 structures: the triangle, which is hierarchy, autocratic, and the box, which is where we have a set of rules, the rules of the game. We got rid of the king, now we have a constitution. Well, now everybody's just playing by the rules of the game, trying to win the competition, corporations, people. So it's a competitive process, and there's no conversation of the whole trying to figure out what's best for everybody. We can't do it that way much longer. We can't, period. That kind of thinking and the whole decision-making mentality in it, decision meaning operating from judgment, cutting away, the D means away, decision means cut. We're not thinking creatively to figure out, to face these problems and come up with answers that make sense to everybody that we can all get behind. We don't have that conversation. And so that would be the third system, what I call the circle system. And that has to happen. I don't see it, we're going to go back to the triangle, and that's going to fail, and unless we transition to the next system. And I think it's easy to do. It can be a short-term change. It involves everybody. Everything I've experienced is that this works at large scale, and it can work at the global level. It has to be put into place. So that's what I'm excited about, what I mean by changing the system. And I really mean these three different kinds of system: the triangle, the box, and the circle. But most people think there's just, quote, democracy and autocracy, and gee, what do we do? No, we have to go forward. We have to go forward to real democracy, or what I call wise democracy. And that's the circle. And it's, I think this is this can happen quickly. It happens by us, in other words, the Wisdom Council process applied globally, for instance, and there's lots of concerns, but they're all addressable. How do you get a random sample? What about all the crazy people? What about the people in North Korea? Blah, blah. I mean, there's lots of difficulties, but we can really, those are just ripples on the edge of this. So what? I'll wait till your next question, I guess.
Great. Yeah, great.
But anyway, I don't want to start on a whole new thing, but I just want to share a little bit of my excitement about the transition that has to happen. It has to happen. And I think we have articulated a way that this can happen quickly. Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that you say, well, it's not about only sitting in a circle, but it's you invented really new ways of talking together, creating new things or creating new ideas. Maybe you can tell us a little bit or share a little bit, what is the difference from a normal facilitation and a dynamic facilitation, because it's not only about sitting together in a room. So what is the difference?
And in the dynamic facilitation, we sit in like a half circle, and we face a set of charts. And the charts are holding the problem. And the facilitator is not commenting on the problem or directing the group in any way, but is trying to help people hold the space at a very high level of conversation. And what I mean by that is, well, we have lots, and I don't know German, so you can maybe help me with that, but we have lots and lots of words for the kind of conversation that are out there. And if you listen to politicians or anybody, they just throw them out there. They don't have any sense of what they mean. Discussion, we're going to have a discussion, we're going to have a conversation, oh yeah, we're going to have a dialogue, oh yeah, we're going to have a deliberation, oh, we're going to have a problem solving session, oh, we're going to have a discuss, I mean, it's all these words actually have meanings, and they're talking and pointing to different kinds of conversation. And all of them seem to celebrate when they click out of negotiation, for instance, and they finally get to a place where we're all trying to figure out something that works for everybody. Oh, that's not a negotiation, that's something else. Or when they click out of deliberation, where they're weighing the 5 options, and they get creative and start thinking of new options. Oh, that's something else. This something else is the key. That's the part we want. And dynamic facilitation, I'm giving it a name. I'm saying, okay, we don't have a name for it. I'm calling it choice creating. Not in the sense of creating lots of choices where we then make the decision. No, in the sense where we co-create the choice, what we're going to do going forward. We're all talking, we're coming, and we're excited because we have breakthroughs, and we all know what we're going to do, and what we know what the truth is. We know what we have a shared vision of what we want, and we have an understanding of how we're going to get there. And now there is a we, finally, there's a real we that can take collective action. Like we can tell government what to do. If it's all of us, we can direct government. We can redirect the Constitution. We can do all kinds. That is the almighty we that people wave their arms about. And just having that shared sense of conversation and understanding, there's a distributed action. Each of us can act individually, and we're working together, we're sharing, and then we have another coming together, and another coming together, and another coming. So it's what we're doing, what we want to do is we want to facilitate the spirit of choice creating, that conversation that's all conclusive at the global level. I don't think it's an option. I think we have to do this. And it can be done very quickly, I believe. Quickly meaning 5 years or something. And then the other piece is that, well, I'm going to keep going. So I'll let you the question.
And what is your idea about this wisdom council process that is globally, but you have experiences in organization on a national level, on a local level, regional level? So what is, because you emphasize it, it's a process. It's not only one time coming together, finding a choice or creating a choice, but it's ongoing. So maybe you can just share a little bit. What is your idea about it?
Well, okay, I call it the To Be project. I've given it a name, 8 steps. And step 1 is to assemble the very few people who are slapping their heads going, oh, yes, this has to happen. We have to find those people. There are not very many of them out there, but we have to get those people together. And then we can get in a room, and hopefully with some people with some money and maybe some media connections, and I'm not sure, but there has to be, I call it just us. We have to assemble just us. That's step 1. I hope I remember these steps. And then step 2 is we're going to tackle, and for the first one, we're going to tackle an impossible problem, some big, awful, I call it a monster problem, dragon issue, it's a monster problem. It's like climate change, something that everybody goes, oh yeah, it's impossible, we're screwed. No, that's the kind of issue that choice creating is built to address. The other kinds of talking are aimed at stuff we already know how to solve. Like the serenity prayer or the circle of influence or all that stuff. We've learned over time to only work on what you can do something about. Well, who's back there saying you can only do this? Who's doing that? Who's telling me I can only do that? What we need to do is let our feelings tell us what's really scary and what's really going on, and pay no attention to what we can't do anything about. We're going to work on this. And now we're going to have a dynamic facilitator in a room, and we're going to work on that issue, and we're going to have breakthroughs. And it gets exciting. After a while, people they get excited. They get excited about the people that they're with. We have a widely diverse audience or group, and we're excited because we're working together. You think completely differently than me. How are we doing this? Because we're making progress not by agreeing and disagreeing, but by breakthroughs. And that's what we need to solve an impossible to solve problem. And one of the things I do to help people realize that you can solve impossible to solve problems is to help them notice that, find something in the room around you that wasn't once an impossible to solve problem, because you can't find one. Everything was once impossible to solve, and somebody went past that barrier.
Wow.
Okay, that's step 2. All right, we find the impossible to solve that we're going to work on first. And then we randomly select. Now, as much as possible, we randomly select from the global population, just 12 to 16 people, that's all. They're not an advisory group. There's nobody to advise to. There's no governance. So we randomly select those people. This is step 3. As much as possible, we turn it over to somebody who knows how to maybe approximate that. And we'll do a lousy approximation at first, but we'll get better. And we probably won't get anybody from North Korea. I'm stupid joke. But we'll get a symbol of all of us. And then step 4 is they go into a room for just 3, maybe days, 4 days, something. We bring them face to face, fly them to wherever, one place 1 year, another place another year, Africa, Middle East, whatever. And they meet for 3 or 4 days with a dynamic facilitator. Now, if they do dynamic facilitation, we don't care who that facilitator is. I mean, it's not a control thing. It's just helping those people think at a high level, at this level of choice creating. And what we've discovered in every place but one, except you and I had this experience, and we even got it there too, is everybody reaches unity and is excited about the process. And we had that in we have a story to tell, but it's too long. But anyway, it's the only time that I know that a group didn't quite reach unity. And in hundreds of times we've done this, and you and I did it together. So, but it worked anyway. And so it's like, my God, it worked anyway. Okay, so that's probably step 4, where they meet. And then they come on stage, and hopefully we have an audience, some live audience, and maybe a live audience face to face with celebrities, maybe Taylor Swift and the CEO of Exxon. I don't know, but there's a live audience. You're interested to hear how this conversation goes. So we have broadcast media walking around, and so there's live. Everybody can see it, and what happens is that the live audience hears the unified position of the Wisdom Council and the story it tells about how it got where it did to the unity. And then they turn their chairs and talk. And most generally, people say, yeah, why aren't we doing that? In other words, we're able to export the feeling of choice creating that we can establish in the small group into that larger audience when they talk. We do our best to export that same spirit. Like when we don't just share, here's the answer they came up with, agree, disagree. No, we're not doing that. We're saying, here's the story that we're building. This is where we started. This is where we got to. Where are you with this? And people they're generally with it because this is a random group and that's what they got to. So, okay, so I've lost track, but the group goes, 4th step, they go into dynamic facilitation. They come out, and the 5th step is they present to a live audience, and then we keep the conversation going and include more people that's the 6th step. So we have the web to work with, and we have lots of possibilities, and we can have different presentations. We want everybody to be in one conversation about this, and we want that conversation as much as possible to be in the spirit of choice creating at the whole system level. And then we want to structure it so that it's ongoing. So next month there's another group and another process and another issue and another, and there's a checking back in on the different issues. And so what we're doing is we're establishing this overarching we the people conversation, all of us in one conversation, and we just do it. It's brief moments, and then you're back in real life, the other life. But what happens is that there's a switch, because real life then becomes the Wisdom Council process, not the other stuff is is the in-between time that really isn't where we're self-destructing. We can't do that part. So we're gonna start putting common sense and working together and facing these issues and among corporations, among the culture, among governance. It's a new economic system. In other words, capitalism is just this competition with the rules, supposedly fair rules, but we know that's gone out the window. It's capitalism is really a competition, and all the actual ideas of capitalism, at least established by Adam Smith, none of the criteria are met anymore. We're just in a system that's on exponential growth in the wrong direction. How is there a we that can say, whoops, we don't want to do this anymore? Let's figure out what our situation is and what we want and how best to get there, and then keep that conversation going so that we're always adjusting, and we're doing it in a way that's respectful and it's a creative conversation so that it's different than our current conversation, which based in judgment. This is a conversation based in creativity. So issues like racism and prejudice and all these things start to go away just from the process. We don't even have to address them. I mean, we will, but it's the process that caused the problem in the first place. And if we shift the process, we can make this. So, okay, and then I think there's a ninth step, and I'll just say one more, and that is that I think what happens then that we don't get to take. The step one is assembling just us. We don't need anybody's permission. We can do this whole thing. We can set it up. We don't need anybody's permission to generate this symbol of all of us and to use dynamic facilitation. But the last step, which is to facilitate, which is to have there be a new form of global governance that's based on this. So there will be, I don't know, maybe a constitution, maybe something, but it'll be secondary to the conversation. That comes from the Wisdom Council process. Every Wisdom Council, almost, not quite every, says at the end, hey, we need to keep doing this. This is great. Why aren't we doing this? And then I'm imagining that as that builds up, people are going to start saying, well, we need to keep doing this. And the structuring will not come from us. It will come from the Wisdom Councils themselves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That will structure the new system of which we will be doing, like a global constitution, for instance, which I think is likely, but it won't be in charge. The in chargeness will be we the people.
So if I understand it correctly, you say we don't try to fit in the Wisdom Council process, so the circle process, into the existing box of democracy.
That's right.
Because our democracy is a competitive system of parties that try to win, and they have to find in a difficult ways to find solutions, and there is opposition and so on. So you say, actually, it is a total reinvention of what is called, or what could be democracy. Is that right?
Yes, I call it wise democracy because the term's already taken, but it really is, we're moving to democracy instead of this democratic republic concept that we're trying to make work, but it can't really work in today's world because, I mean, it sort of began, I think, well, of course it began in Greece and Roman times and stuff, but in the US, when they created the Constitutional Convention, and they did this is what they did. They had a stopping and thinking by a small group and said, hey, here's the best we could come up with. What do you think? And then they had conversations that basically said, yeah, this is how we ought to go. And so there was a kind of a we the people back then that died away, and now the Constitution took over. So I forgot where I was going with this, but anyway, yeah. But anyway, so this isn't this really is the democracy part. They were doing it back then but they didn't know it. They were doing this, we the people, because they basically got all the enfranchised people to, they didn't have the Native Americans or the slaves or, women or, non-property holders, but for the time it was a miracle. And we need to upgrade that. So back then they designed a system which was cool in a democratic way, a truly democratic way. But their system they designed assumed we were all independent people. And there was no king. We're just independent people. Now, what's a good design for that? They came up with a good design. And we're trying to make that design work. Now, we're not independent anymore. We have become interdependent in a major way. Just this planet, we're in a tragedy of the commons. We are totally interdependent now. And so that system, assuming independence, is breaking down and causing all kinds of problems. So what I'm saying is that if we can bring back that true democracy process, well, now what we've done is we have a system that could actually work when we're interdependent. And we don't have to base our system on competition anymore. And we have a system that's celebrating diversity and recognizing that we're in a living system. And all of us are supporting these joint efforts and coming to a shared understanding of who we are and what we're doing, a new mythology, if you will. So I'm sorry, I added a whole bunch to what you just said.
No, that's wonderful. You emphasize so much that it is about the process of coming together, having this really high level conversation. And I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit, what is your experience? What is key? What is the secret about the process that this can work?
Yeah.
Because it's...
I think in my book, which I was 20 some years ago, I have a chart that talks about like 5 different levels of thinking about problems. When you're really working hard, when you face a problem, the first reaction for a lot of people is dismiss it or react or something, just kind of escape from these problems. And that's what's happening with whenever I talk to actual people. They want to live in a world where those problems don't exist, and so they turn their attention. They don't even want to talk about it. That's level 1. Level 2 is what I call decision making, where you got some options that are on the table and you vote. You vote. It's voting, basically. We vote and we add up the numbers. Okay, great. And then we go ahead that way, which is not very big in terms of not very capable for solving big problems. And the next level, you might call it problem solving. But what people mean by problem solving is somehow we were doing fine and we just have to get back to where we were. We had this problem come up, and we're going to try and stay rational and push our way our emotions and feelings and just try and analyze this thing and break it into parts and put it back together. Much more capable than the decision making, much better. The next level is what I call creative problem solving. And that's where, like, brainstorming. And that's where we're doing creativity, but we forgot something. We're not doing emotions. We're not doing feelings. We're doing creativity without that. So there's lots of bumper stickers around. I'll say visualize world peace. Somehow we can just visualize it and then magically it will happen. And I think that there's some truth to that. That works in some ways, but it doesn't work for the whole thing. You can't just imagine a world without climate change and expect the real results, I don't think. So those are the 4 levels, and I'm pointing to another level that I call choice creating. And that's where we're being creative, but we're including the feelings, the emotions, the scaredness, the frustrations with other people. In other words, we're just taking whatever comes up that people say or feel, we try and help them speak with feeling, with energy. We start out, just say, tell us about this problem and what, tell us how bad it is. It's kind of a description of the yuck or the mess. And then we work with that, the feeling level. And whatever anybody says, we just keep the room safe. So you can say whatever you want, and we want it to be authentic. And we're going to help everybody to hear that as a contribution to something that we're all doing together. And after a while, we begin to trust these emotional blurtings or feelings or whatever's coming up inside, that we're using more of our capability, our genius, which is hidden, tucked away. We've all suppressed it somehow. And we want to help people come into a room where whatever they say is going to be safe for them, safe for others, and it's going to be a contribution to what we're doing together. And after a while, people get that, and they're excited about it. They like it. It's a fun place to be. It's like somebody called it problem-solving jazz.
Free jazz.
Actually, it was Tom Atlee, I think, called it that. So yeah, but I like that. So, but anyway, that's the level of thinking that we're aiming for. And I'm just doing my best to help people see that's a separate kind of thinking. It's not in deliberation, So the big thing in the academic world is deliberative democracy. Well, great. Deliberation is a nice improvement to what we've got, and it will help mute the symptoms of our current system, but it's not changing the system. And if we do choice creating, we have a process there. Now we have a pathway to, or a possibility of achieving, we have a way to reliably evoke choice in small groups and especially in large systems. Well, heck, now we've got a way to be in this wise democracy at the global, at the national level, and so I'm sitting here waiting for the world to get open enough to be able to want to hear this. And you thank you, Emma, for making it possible.
Yeah, that's a pleasure, and we will see what happens. So many people would say, well, as long as the system exists where we have decision making, we have representative democracy, and so on, people can meet, and it will make no difference. So how could we solve this, or what is your idea about it, that this can really make an impact or make a difference, also in a short term?
Well, I think in a short term, it makes an event, even before the systems change happens. In the short term, if we, what I call just us, co-create a legitimate voice of the public interest. In other words, we randomly select people and they reach unity and nobody's paying any attention. We've created a legitimate voice of the public interest already. I mean, there's no arguing with it. Random, so pure random, we're going to do it again next month. Random and unity. Now, gee, that's never been in our politics before. We don't have one of those what the public interest is. We just have special interests doing battle, each one claiming they're the public interest, or often they do. Sometimes they don't care, but they're claiming, oh, this is best for people. Oh, this is best for people. But we can actually add that immediately to the public conversation. And if we get media support where people start to know, and there's no arguing really with it, because, well, for one thing, they don't understand about choice creating. That they're still doing decision making and arguing back and forth between these set positions, or trying to weigh the three options that somebody gave them. I mean, that whole level of thinking is just, we're transcending that level of thinking, and we're coming up with legitimate And what we try and do is tell a story. So it's like, here's where, in other words, we want to share this spirit of choice creating into the larger conversation. And so that's what we're trying to do. Each iteration of the Wisdom Council is to bring along that new story of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Can you share one example where you where we can, somebody who didn't experience it, is maybe it's sometimes a little difficult to understand what's the difference between there is a decision made or a real other new choice. Is there an example that you have, do you remember, where you saw this process?
Well, I'm not sure this. I had a fun time yesterday with this conversation I was telling you about, and it was. It's so. I feel like such a bad guy all the time. I keep coming into these conversations where people are talking blissfully, meditating in the music, and they're talking about greater consciousness and if we just educate all the people, like he was talking about living systems. If people got it that we're in a living system and they understood that and sharing that, it seems like that would make a big difference, but it would just take long. And if people got it that their own personal, they understood themselves more and dealt with their own shadow and worked on themselves personally more, and we helped other people do that. I mean, all of these are individualistic in my mind. They're incremental. We're trying to influence people, and they don't take into the account that we're actually in a system. We're in a system. It's not changing the system. In the US, we have a constitution. There it is. It's right there. And it directs how we think and talk. We're sort of a super organism more than we are. So this guy yesterday was, I don't want to come in and say, hey, it's just not going to work. I'm sorry. Yeah, A, that's point one. And B, there's a missing piece here that how can we do this all? So I was trying to fish on something, and I came up with the story of the caterpillar into the butterfly yesterday. And I'm excited about it. I think it would work. It seems to me it worked for him, and I loved.
Can you tell the story? What is the
I will tell the
caterpillar?
story. Well, the caterpillar, turns into a butterfly, but not because we train each cell of the caterpillar how to be a butterfly. That isn't what we're doing. It may help later, how to do that. It may help later, but actually what happens is that there's this building of a cocoon, and all the cells turn into mush, except I'm not quite all, but then, and then the caterpillar miraculously appears. Now, all that's magical, but see, our current thinking process is to try and turn it into Newtonian science, and no, this is okay. Let's accept this magic. It really is happening. It's how living systems do change, and teaching the individual cells of the caterpillar isn't going to do it. There has to be a collective effort that we're going to build this cocoon, and in this case, it doesn't have to be all the cells participating in building the cocoon. It can be just, I don't know what builds the cocoon. Some piece builds the cocoon, but it's a living entity that, in our case, it's a conversation. We're setting up this stepping back and thinking, choice creating conversation. And that's the cocoon. But we do it in a regular way so that we can expect this kind of miracle, this magical sense of, we don't know how people are going to respond and how they're going to act and what they're going to do. But anyway, Rudy, I think everybody's kind of familiar with the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. And I think it really helps to see that there's a whole system aspect of this that has to be met.
We Pioneers of Change, its logo is a butterfly, and we always share this story from the caterpillar and the butterfly. So I'm really happy to share that you shared it now.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah. So what seems important is that we don't think of the individuals only, but how these relate to each other and how we can really connect to each other and how we can form this container, a safe container where we can trust each other, where we can express everything we have inside us, and not only our civilized individual being, but and not only the rational. And then so these are the ingredients so that we can come together and really there can emerge something different, right?
Yes, and I would say that it's a facilitative element. In other words, the cocoon is a facilitator to the process, and we can be that what I call just us. The people that slap their heads and say, "Oh God, this has to happen." We can be the facilitative element. We don't have to be in it doing any. We don't have to get everybody involved. We can just set up the facilitative element so that process can happen.
Mm-hmm. And this is really, it lands like very encouraging for me, what you were telling now, that say we can do that. It's not about waiting for somebody else to do it or being invited to do it, but just start it and share the results, share the process, and let's see what happens.
I don't think we need more than $3 or $4 million. I think maybe we can randomly select. We can pay somebody to pick the random people. Somebody that has something to lose if they do a lousy job. We just need these people to show up at a place, and we can take them take their picture. Just taking their picture is a big deal, because okay, that's like Earth from space. We'd never had a picture of us before. And then they go in a room for just 3 days with some monster problem, and they come out, they're going to be excited. And they're going to be, and I would love talking to you, because there's always this one exception I have in my mind, and sometimes you can tell that story, but it worked anyway.
Yeah. Maybe we can share it now, because you also already mentioned it once, because we had one person in our group that had a mental issue, and it was really difficult for her to be in this process of unity.
Yes.
And so we decided together that she would get we had the idea that she could get time on stage where she could just share her story with it, and her what she wanted to say, and the group added their own results, right?
Yes.
So this was our solution to go with this situation that was kind of difficult.
It was really hard, because I could write down, or you were doing your thing. You could write down exactly what she said, exactly, but she didn't recognize that she just said that. So it was that was one of the things that I remember being so weird. And it was really, it wasn't that she had a different position than anybody else. She was quite in line with everybody, but she did not like the idea, I think, of reaching unity, period. So it was really weird. But anyway, and it worked beautifully. And I should say, the other part that was exciting is it was at an interfaith conference. And one of the exciting things that I thought, one of the exciting conclusions that the group reached, correct me if I'm wrong, was something around, hey, all of our religions are using symbols from the Middle Ages. And these symbols aren't resonating with people today like they did. And we should maybe look at our symbolism and think about what kind of symbols we want to be carrying forward. And possibly there's ways to link or something. I thought it was a beautiful conclusion, but it didn't get that clarity of expression at the end because of her.
Yeah. But it was like this. I think the interesting thing is that we come to results in these wisdom council processes that nobody would think of before. So it's like, yeah, the sum is more than the individual pieces. So it's really important what comes out of the connections and out of the trust when we come together. Mm-hmm.
It's really something that stayed with me forever. That and I feel really good. And then on the cab ride back from the to the airport or whatever, to the train station, I remember that somebody said, "Oh," I was telling him a little bit about it, and he says, "Oh, is this your first interfaith conference?" As though this is what you get.
Wait, maybe coming back to your vision or your wish. We our online summit has the title Courage to Courage. So have courage to be courageous, we could say. What do you think? What kind of courage would we need, or do we need in these times of crisis, and to really get to this next level of wise democracy that do you envision?
Oh, it's so easy for people to dismiss. To read, as I begin to talk, they'll say, "Oh, I'm 68 years old. I know how people think. There's no way those people can come together." There's a immediate safety valve that people like to pull that somehow keep them out of listening to what I'm talking about. Like one of the things people like to coach me. Oh, well, if people are responding to you negatively, then obviously you need coaching and marketing and things. It's like, no, I want you. That's fine if you want to coach me after you hear what I'm saying. Fine, but it isn't. I'm not doing a marketing thing. This is about your life and my life, and I mean, I don't know, but there's an escape cord whenever these problems, these existential problems, and somebody wants to talk about the solution or a solution. I call it a holution. They don't want to hear. I can fill a lecture hall if I want to talk about the problems. If you talk about the solution, you're not going to find anybody. It's amazing. I want people to have the courage to stay with it. We really do have these problems, and these so-called solutions are not enough. They can't work. I mean, educating people is great. I celebrate it. It has to happen, of course, but don't think that's going to solve the problem we're going to have. It's just going to make people miserable as the problem gets worse. We have to actually look at the whole system and address that. And here's a way to do it. And it's actually good news, because the good news is this makes it all easier. Because if you and I can take this change at the deep structural level so that the system begins to just be different, now all those changes that people are working at, the living systems awareness, the appreciation of diversity, the talking across the political boundaries, all that stuff happens automatically. Here's a shortcut to that, as well as the fact that we can now have the capability collectively to act.
So the really courageous thing is to believe that there can be a solution.
Oh, nice. Very good. And to stay curious about what it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well.
Oh, I want to say more about that, because I really like this guy. He's a podcaster. His name's Nate Hagens. I was listening to him the other day, and he was talking about hubris. as being one of the big problems. And the people,
What is the problem?
hubris, which is when people think they have the answer to everything.
Okay.
There's all these, they run into people everywhere who think they have the answer to everything. And then he said, the truth is there is no answer, or there is no easy answer. So, I mean, to me, that's hubris to say that's what you'll hear over all the time, you'll hear there is no silver bullet here. There's no silver bullet. Or you'll hear, don't work on what you can't affect. That let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of all that. Let's stay curious and hold on to this idea that there's something out there, and if there's a solution out there, and we want to stay open to the people that, including myself, that think they have something, that think they have, and we can keep that conversation alive.
Oh, beautiful. What is your wish for the people who listened now to our conversation, or from them, for or from them?
Well, I hope that curiosity is what I always want, rather than that dismissal, And so I hope you look at the website, wisedemocracy.org, and just kind of, it's okay to get excited. It's okay to go, yippee, this could be something here. Even it's just some ideas that might work. And it can be done at the local level. It can be done at the regional level. But I'm just saying, I'm kind of pointing to the global level because it has to be done at that level also. Yeah. So I hope, I would love it if people would take a look at the website and feel a sense of excitement that something's here.
Yeah, and the idea that we can solve it together if we just believe in it. Oh.
And the diversity is an asset. So all those, like in the United States right now with Trump, we're trying to close the borders and angry at the immigrants or whatever. I mean, no, how do we need to be in a place where everybody matters and all of us can get there. And the diversity is an asset. In our current system, diversity is a liability. We want diversity. Diversity is an asset. How do you have a creative breakthrough without people thinking differently? It has to happen. We have to have the diversity in order to have those shifts and breakthroughs. And
this is now really interesting, that we need diversity in order to reach unity.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. In the Latin, it's e pluribus unum. And that's one of the expressions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, Hemma. So good to talk to you and see you again. And I thank you for this opportunity. It's really nice to
yeah.